maybe your expectations for the age is what's wrong. Maybe it's not so much us. Maybe it's just that like societal expectations are weird, quite frankly. What if that's what's weird? Huh, gotcha. People who think they're the ones who can say what's immature and what's not. Maybe it's the societal expectations that are immature. Hello, welcome. Trauma Informed SLP. Kim Neely here. SLP stands for Speech Language Pathologist. So I have a graduate degree in Speech Language Hearing Sciences, over 10 years of clinical experience across the lifespan with all kinds of neurodivergence and various conditions, and including acquired things like brain injuries and such. And I've worked in schools, I've worked in medical facilities. And so, I have some takes. I have some takes on things. And I also am neuroqueer myself and late diagnosed. So I have my own takes on that as well and my own journey here. So on this channel, I basically use all of that plus my whole trauma-informed knowledge to info dump at the internet. Hello, internet. Looking like you're looking like you. Looking like you lately, I will say. It's hard to describe the internet anything beyond that. Anyway, so yeah, today is a power outage day at my home. I'm going to bring my little fidgety dude up here. I've decided this is probably a better way to do it. So I am recording with natural light, and I'm just going to keep doing some hot takes while I can. And yes, it is December, hence these are the only holiday earrings I own. So if you know what these are, drop it in a comment below, baby. Yeah, that's right, fragile. Okay. If you know that reference, drop it. You know what? There's probably going to be a whole generation of people who have no idea what that movie is, because I feel like so many of us watched it as like the marathon on like TNT or TBS, right? Like on like cable, syndicated cable stuff. It was like that movie was on all the time. And I would assume it still is on those channels. But like, yeah, there's going to be so many people who have no idea. Do you know that? I mean, that just struck me the other day, actually, too. Like, there are so many movies I only saw parts of as a kid that, like, there's gonna be whole generations of people who miss out on, like, I've seen, like, the last half of Spaceballs, like, 50 times because it would be on TBS when I got home from school, and it's like, oh, cool, I'll watch the last half of Spaceballs, sure, Like, that era is kind of gone now. Wow. So, welcome. This is one of my hot takes where I just sit here and I rant at you, internet. That's what I'm going to do here. And this hot take is something that comes up and I am just kind of tired of it. It's a little bit of a soapbox for me, and I'm so annoyed with seeing it online, like either in short form content or in what people describe as cringe or on Reddit, which is the idea that neurodivergent interest or neurodivergence are inherently somehow immature due to the things we enjoy doing. I am so tired of this. Can we please stop equating maturity with like what you do for fun? Like, what kind of dystopian nightmare world do we live in that we have to judge what people do as hobbies or for fun? Good Lord. And I get it. Like, when I worked at a high school, of course, teenagers, they're always interested in not being cringe. And, and I know at that age, like, learning how to really like connect with peers and become part of a group is really important at that point in human development and emotional development, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I get it. But at the same time, can we just calm down about our use of the word mature? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Drop it in a comment below, though. Like, if you feel like the people who call people out for being immature are 9 times out of 10 the most immature comparatively. Like, I feel like the people out there throwing out that word making me think, maybe a little projection. Maybe, I don't, why they keep saying that word. I do not think it means what they think it means, because they're immature. Because I get that sometimes where people are like, oh, you are kind of immature for your age, because I'm like weird and quirky or whatever. Which is a whole separate rant on labels, because, people will be out there like, everybody says they're neurodivergent these days. Nobody needs that label. It's so dumb. And then they're like, but you're really weird. And it's like, I don't know why that's a better label. Okay. So I guess like you just are offended by the labels that I choose for myself. I think that's most of people's issues with labels. They want to have the right and the power to do the labeling, to be the ones doing the labeling, not to be the ones accepting the labels that someone else has already determined. Separate rant for a separate day, I guess. But anyway, look, you hear this about other adults judging adults for playing video games. And it's like, dude, video games were around when I was a kid. Like, there is a whole large generation of adults now who grew up playing video games. And surprise, surprise, they continue to do it. You know, kind of like how people grew up watching movies and they continue to watch movies, you know? It's almost like sometimes when different entertainment sources come out as a kid, you just kind of keep doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think a single boomer was like, it's dumb to keep watching movies past a certain age. Like, come on. Because they grew up watching movies. It was normal to them. Well, video games are normal. That's the way it goes now. Video games are normal. Welcome to the 21st century, where video games are normal. Okay? That's just a thing people do for funsies. It's a fun, entertainment-y thing. Okay? And I mean, I know video games. The other thing with video games that I don't get is people vilify it, where they're like, oh, but what about all the shooting and the killing and all this? And I'm like, first off, studies have already shown that people know the difference. Your brain knows the difference between real and like simulated stuff. So like that ain't a thing. That doesn't correlate with real life behavior. But also, there's so many genres of video games. It's just like with movies. There's a bajillion genres, you know? Like, I don't know how many people watched Indiana Jones growing up and decided to be an archaeologist. Probably a few people, but I'm sure also very high number of people probably left the field when they realized they're not going to be Indiana Jones, because that's not what archaeology really is. Turns out the Hollywood Harrison Ford version of archaeology is not accurate. So, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, can we just get off people's backs about what they do for fun? Because it's hard enough to have fun and enjoyment in this world. Like, why do we have to judge it so hard? And I don't know, it just gets annoying because, like, listen, I enjoy whimsy. I like fantasy and whimsy and going to the Renaissance Festival and maybe doing more like, you know, LARPing stuff maybe at some point in the future. I don't know. Or maybe I just want to do more like historical reenactment stuff. I'm not sure. These things are fun, though. The idea of like making a costume, dressing up, and like getting to immerse myself in some kind of little world where other little weirdos like myself are walking around just being our true weird selves and just enjoying ourselves and having a blast. Why does that make me immature? Genuinely. What is immature about that? Being disinhibited or like just being able to enjoy myself? Does that make me immature as an adult? Am I just supposed to be miserable all the time? Is that how it's supposed to work? Because that's pretty dystopian. I feel like maybe we need to redefine that. Like, I don't know. Joy is hard enough to find in this world. You know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't put so many constraints on ourselves. And like hearing other people's voices in our head telling us to not do that thing because it's cringe and horrible, even though it's something we enjoy and it's not harming anybody. Which is the big key here, of course. Like, if you have a hobby that harms people, okay, yeah, you need to find a replacement for that hobby. That's not okay in my mind. But if it's something super innocent, like you like collecting, I guess this Lala Boo Boo thing, I don't know. I don't really get the Lala Boo Boo thing, except that like I have been around for other things. I was around for Beanie Babies and I was around for Cabbage Patch Kids in the 80s. Like, I was around for these things where everybody else was rushing to collect the thing, the Tamagotchis and all that. Like, you know, this is not that new to me, that there's people out there wanting to collect these things. And it's like, okay, I guess you do you, you know, like, and I'm not going to poo-poo that on anybody. I'm not going to yuck their yum. You know what I mean? And I think the bigger thing for me is, I don't think of maturity as being anything that relates to like what you enjoy in life. You know, if you grew up with Pokemon and you're a 38-year-old who still really loves Pokemon, all right, cool. Enjoy your Pokemon. Why not? I'm a little too old for Pokemon. I don't quite get it, but that's, you know, that's fine. If that's what you like, that's fine. If you've got a collection of stuff, that's fine. Whatever. It's all good. You know what I mean? I think of maturity, for me anyway, and I don't know, maybe this is in line with research on it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I personally think of maturity as being a lot more about continually gaining more self-awareness and, you know, kind of having that, I guess, people call it like the growth mindset, right? Where it's like you continually learn about yourself, you learn about others, you're open to, you know, collaborating, but what's the word? What's the word for when like you have two competing things and you have to compromise? There we go. That's the word. You have to compromise on the thing, you know? Like being able to like compromise, but knowing where your hard boundaries are versus like boundaries that can be compromised, you know? Like that sort of stuff to me is maturity. Like mental health and like being able to exist in a space with another person without freaking out or feeling the need to highly control them or harm them or something. That's maturity. Like, you know, I don't know. I feel like that to me is way more mature than like somebody who comes home and reads like War and Peace instead of playing like Dragon Quest, you know? I don't know. I wouldn't call the War and Peace reader more mature than the Dragon Quest person. If somebody asked me, I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know which one's more mature. I don't know. You just told me what they like doing. That doesn't tell me anything about how mature they are. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand why we have to be so terribly judgmental. I don't know, I guess. But I guess I'm being judgmental about the judgmental people. So I guess it's just a never ending funnily cycle. We could go down here, I suppose, when you really get into it. But let me stop my brain before I jump down that rabbit hole too far, too deep, too much. But yeah, this definitely came to mind. Like I remember a few years ago, I was working with a high school student who was dating another high school student, of course, you know, and had this issue where I don't remember if it was a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever situation it was, said that they were very immature. And this kid, of course, because they were working with me as a speech language pathologist, they were in special education classes. And so, you know, I don't know if that's where the other person's judgment came from, was that like they're immature in the sense that like they're in special ed, therefore they're like a kid, because this kid was not in special ed classes all the time. It was like just for certain subjects. It's not like, you know, they were capable of accessing general ed, like, you know. And I remember this kid, like, they were really bothered by that. They were bothered by the accusation that they were horribly immature. And they basically were asking me, like, how can I be more mature? Like, if that's such a problem, how do I fix that? And I remember talking and being like, this particular student had access to mental health services for a very long time. So from my perspective, this student had a lot of self-awareness, had a lot of knowledge about boundaries, knew a lot about like the behaviors that came with the mental health conditions. And apparently this like accusation of being immature was more focused on the fact that this student had mental health diagnoses that were very hard to cope with and that are disabling for many people who have them. They were under the like anxiety disorder area of the DSM type of thing. And, you know, and I was like, you know, I personally think it's kind of ableist to call someone immature just because it's a mental health thing, personally. I would find that, I mean, I'm not, of course, like a fellow teenager making that judgment, it's like not too surprising, but it's like genuinely, that's kind of an ableist take to think, oh, somebody has a mental health thing, they are inherently immature. It's like, what? Because they have anxiety stuff? They have panic attacks? Like, that doesn't make someone immature. That means they have like a mental illness and or a disability, you know? Like, that's not immaturity, you know? Someone's not immature because they use a wheelchair. That's not why people use wheelchairs, you know? So it's like, why do we think these like more non-apparent disabilities and the behaviors that come from having those non-apparent disabilities equals immature? Like it just, that's another thing that really rubs me the wrong way. So it's either the things you do for fun and for joy and things that give you joy and happiness are immature, or old lady. Like for me with crochet and knitting and stuff, people, you know, there's definitely people who would be like, oh, that's like an old person thing to do. And I'm like, where have you been, man? It's fiber arts are making a comeback, okay? There's serious resurgence here, and plenty of people know them who are not that old. Come on. Anyway, first off. But second off, you know, it's just, it bothers me. It's like they lob immaturity as this big insult. And I think it ultimately just comes down to them wanting to feel superior to you. You know, if they lob it as you're immature, it means I don't have to listen to you. Your perspectives aren't valid. Your opinions aren't valid. You clearly don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's just this huge way of invalidating the other person's experience and what they want from life and what they need from life. And I think that that's really crap, quite frankly. Like, I really think this is a really crap take in my opinion. You know, and when I think of people who are mature, it's like people who can engage in whimsy and fantasy, but who also know, like, they know their own personal boundaries. They know how to take care of themselves. They know how to care for other people in a way that's actually really compassionate and functional for that other person, right? They're able to kind of take themselves out of the equation to really be a true companion and to be a true friend to somebody, you know? And it's like, I think that in my mind is way more mature than walking around and pointing at other people and being like, we don't have to pay attention to those people because they're very immature. You know? I don't know. It's just, I guess it's just another one of those insults people lob around, but it is a weird thing, I think, especially as a late diagnosed neurodivergent. I know other people out there have said this too, which I definitely relate to, which is like you can never, it's like you're both like too immature, but also an old soul, right? It's like we're never quite the age people expect us to be, like in terms of our behaviors and the way we interact with the world. And it's like, maybe your expectations for the age is what's wrong. Maybe it's not so much us. Maybe it's just that like societal expectations are weird, quite frankly. What if that's what's weird? Gotcha. People who think they're the ones who can say what's immature and what's not. Maybe it's the societal expectations that are immature. What about that? Yeah, nailed it. This would be a mic drop, but it's just going to be chapstick. Chapstick drop, because I'm not going to damage my microphone. That would be sad. Also, I don't know where it just went. Oh, there it is. Found it. Chapstick. Yay. Could use some. Okay. Anyway, now I would really like to hear from you guys after I'm done with that quick little like immaturity issue rant. Have you had people lobbing that as an insult? Have you arrived where I'm at with that? Or do you think of it as being something very different? If anyone out there has like the knowledge of like cognitive science and psychology and what researchers say about maturity, I would also love some sources or like a little summary of what's out there for that. That would be amazing to have. Because I think I tried to deep dive this once and it's actually kind of a muddy little area in terms of trying to figure out where it all is, at least from someone who is not specialized in that area. There seem to be a lot of takes on it, even in research, it seems. Also, it kind of seems like, I don't know, it kind of seems like one of those like non-measurable concepts, right? Like maturity is kind of this amorphous thing. So it's like hard to narrow down. And if you can't narrow it down, then you can't really study it. You know, in order to study something, you really have to have a really tight definition. And there are certain colloquial terms and certain things we throw around about human experiences and human psychology that really can't be pinned down very well research-wise. So I don't know if maturity is one of those concepts or not, but it kind of seemed like it might be a little bit that way. But yeah, anyway, drop it in a comment below. If you agree, if you disagree, if you have a different take on it, just let me know. And I don't know, I just feel like, you know, the world is really tough. And the thing that I keep coming back to, especially right now with like everything being so tough and so hard, is that joy and fun are actually an essential part of the human experience, right? Like we have historical records of people in the most atrocious situations still finding ways to have moments of joy and humor and or sharing of art or through whatever, right? You still have that. The humor is levity. You have that stuff still happens. So I think it must just be an inherent part of the way our brains, it's just something we need. We need joy and fun and ways to relax and, you know, and so I don't think, as long as what you're doing to relax isn't harming someone else, why not just go with it? You know, like what's the deal? Shouldn't be too much of a problem, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Anyway, so with all that said, of course, I will do the sign off that I normally do, which is in the spirit of promoting, you know, more compassion, understanding, and maybe less judgment around maturity. Let's all just keep it weird. Let's use those weird, cringy, immature powers for good so we can connect more with each other and maybe help other people understand us more. And in that spirit, keep it weird. And until next time, goodbye. I'm too weird for algorithms, guys, so comment, like, subscribe, do all those things to help these videos to get out to more people. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!